No Box Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, Process Production, and Social Media. Don't forget, say no to the box. Dile no a la caja. 고정관념 일의 상자에서 벗어나세요.
Welcome back to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. This is your co-host, Azaria, and I am the manager of resources and archives for No Box Dance.
This is your co-host, Reina, and I'm the manager of community engagement for No Box Dance.
This is your co-host, Yejin. I am the programming director for No Box Dance.
Hello. This is your co-host, Marthea, and I'm the managing director for No Box Dance. Films are a vehicle for the manifestation of our deepest and most vivid human expression. Well, if this quote can give you any inclination for what we're about to talk about, in this week's episode, I talk with Cara Hagan about her recent book, Screen Dance from Film to Festival. We also talk about navigating the film festival circuit, how social media is influencing the dance world, and her thoughts on the future of dance and film. Cara Hagan is an interdisciplinary artist whose practice exists at the intersections of movement, digital space, words, contemplative practice, and community. She is director of ADF's Movies by Movers, an annual international screen dance festival. Hagan is the author of the new book, Screen Dance from Film to Festival, Celebration and Curatorial Practice, available through McFarland, which you'll hear all about in today's show. With that, Cara, welcome to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. As our listeners know, when I love a book, I overly flag it. I don't know if you can see this. Your book, Cara, is an important one. The thoughtfulness and care you take to walk us, the reader, through the history of film festivals and screen dance, case studies, and everything dance and film curation is much needed, and as you know, the first of its kind. With that, Cara Hagan, I am looking forward to our conversation today on your book, Screen Dance from Film to Festival, Celebration and Curatorial Practice. There are so many great books, but nothing that talked about specifically the film festivals and the development of the film festivals. And I can remember with Yejin, she's the co-founder of No Box, us just trying to source all these different articles and all these things to just kind of understand what film festivals even look like in the history. So thank you. I have to say that. And I'm just excited to let's dig right in about the book. So you are the director and curator of ADF's Movies by Movers, which is an annual festival dedicated to the celebration of the conversation between the body and the camera. And in your book, Screen Dance from Film to Festival, Celebration and Curatorial Practice, and in the March 10th book launch video recording, you talk about the discrepancies and lack of diversity in screen dance. You share that you are the first Black woman to start a dance film festival in the United States, which I have to say, I didn't know that, and that is shocking. And you talk, and here at No Box, highlighting diversity and underrepresented voices is one of the many, many reasons why we started our own film festival in the first place. And in chapter 10 of your book, you share findings from case studies measuring representation in screen dance, which I'm very grateful for, because I think all these conversations are extremely important, but to have that data to present is of the utmost importance to back up these conversations and experiences that we talk about. So based on your research and your vast experience in dance and film, can you talk about what gatekeeping looks like in the dance film industry?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that I was the first Black woman to start a screen dance festival in the US either, until I was looking at the history, and I was like, there must be somebody, but there was nobody. Now, Claire, over at the San Francisco Dance Film Festival, turned me on to some information about a San Francisco Dance Film Festival that was prior to the one that we know today in the 1970s.
That's the one that you talk about in your book.
Yeah, and Lenwood Sloan, and Claire is going to present some research that she's done on this as well at the symposium that Doug Rosenberg is holding at UMadison. And So I was excited to find a person of color in the early days of the Screen Dance Festival, but he was the only one, right? The only Black man that I found, the only person of color, period, that I found early on in that. And then doing the case studies, I mean, if anybody who's done data collection knows how incredibly tedious that work is, which is why it took me 5 years. I mean, for ADF's movies by movers, there's 5+ years of data there. And then being able to do the same process with 2 other festivals was really helpful, but also took quite a while to do. And they were gracious in that. And so when I think about gatekeeping, back to your question, I think about the health and well-being of the field. In my opinion, I don't know that I really want to call it gatekeeping so much, but of course it is. I mean, we choose what gets seen and what doesn't get seen each season, that we have a competitive submission process, right? And so we are gatekeeping. At the same time, I think that when we think about our curatorial practice as something that comes from a spirit of wanting to support artists and not just show the things that are like, quote, good, or quote, beautiful, or quote, high production value, or whatever you want to call it, things that we know that people will automatically enjoy or connect to because it looks more like something that they've seen before. In the films that may not have some of that particular polish, or may approach the narrative and or arc of the film from a more experimental lens, or something that we haven't quite seen in the mainstream, that we have an opportunity to say, hey, audience, there's more that exists than just what you've binged this past weekend. And maybe there's something to be said for highlighting the artists and their work that are forcing us to see something different than what we're used to seeing. And then be able to make connections between that and what we have seen, because everybody who knows me knows that I don't think that there's anything particularly original that any human being can do under the sun, right? Like, everything's been done at some point. But what I think artists are adept at doing is helping us to see things in a different way. To say, here's this shared human experience, whatever that may be, and this is how I'm dealing with it. This is how I'm thinking about it. Maybe it can help you think about this shared experience in a different way, or this thing that we see, or this texture that we've experienced before, that we see or touch on a daily basis, or that exists somewhere in the world, right? And to shut ourselves off from all the different ways that we could experience these things feels really limiting and like we're missing something really important. And so as somebody who has taken on the task of presenting other people's work, I want to make sure that in that, it's not my job to have any opinions about someone's trajectory such that their work is not valuable at all.
I'd love it if you could kind of walk through your mental process when you're curating.
Yeah, so I don't have a rubric, and I've had, mechanisms in the past where I've been like, okay, well, does this meet certain criteria? But that just didn't really work for me. Now, Film Freeway obviously has its own rubric. And when I'm curating with other people, I will fill that out as a way of being able to communicate with them as we're kind of going over the first watch of the films. Now, when I watch films, and especially when I've done solo curation, I have to watch everything a couple of times. Like, I can't just watch it once and be like, okay, that's it. I don't want to see it again. I actually have to go through and get familiar with the entire batch of films before I can start to make any actual decisions about what's going to be in the festival and what's not going to be in the festival. And so it's not just that I'm considering a single film. I'm considering each film within the context of the entire group. And as I'm going through and watching, what's happening in the back of my mind is I'm going, okay, well, I'm watching this film. I saw this other film a couple of days ago when I was watching some other submissions, and maybe they might play nicely together. Let me just keep that in my head, and I'll take some notes and say, oh, this film and this film and this film. Maybe that's the beginning of a screening. And then maybe I'll see another film, and then I'll go, oh, actually, I'm having a different thought about that. Maybe not this film and this film, but maybe this film and this film and this film instead. And really just thinking about the energetic experience of watching a group of films together. Because at no point, unless it's like a feature, for example, are we watching any of these shorts alone. They're always in conversation with other films. And so when people, sometimes they'll email me for feedback, like, why didn't my film get picked? Can you give me feedback about my film? Sometimes it's kind of like, well, I don't really have anything particular to say about the film, like, oh, the film was bad. No, it just didn't necessarily find a place in this particular assemblage of films. That it's really about the collection of films and about what the entire festival, the assemblage of pieces that you've brought together, are doing when they are brought into space together.
So I think this would be a perfect time to ask about advice to our listeners who might be filmmakers. How would you recommend they navigate the film festival circuit?
Okay, so a couple of things. So there are a lot more festivals than there used to be. I mean, in the book, I say that there's over 300, but that was then, right? And there's new festivals being born every day, and not all of them are totally visible, right? Like, not everybody has their stuff up on Film Freeway. Some of them are operating under the umbrella of other arts organizations. Some of them are operating under different circumstances. And so we actually don't know exactly how many there are across the world at this moment, but there are many. And
it's so exciting.
Yeah, I would say to just start doing research, and you can tell a lot about a film festival based on who's running it. So look at the staff and see who's there. You know, do you feel like you're represented in that space? You know, looking for example, festivals that have diverse curatorial boards, right? Do you see people who are folks of color? Do you see the festival being run by queer folks? Do you see any disabled folks on the team or running the festival? Like, I make some examples in the book, like thinking about the Tiny Dance Film Festival in San Francisco, for example, two queer folks of color running that particular festival, very DIY. I mean, you know, their personalities are all over this festival, right? And I don't know them very well. I know them from the interactions that I've had in terms of being an artist and having had work in that festival, but also through interviewing Kat and a couple of other ways that we've been connected, either through social media or something like that. But, you know, you can really say, okay, this is their festival. This says something about who's running it. Some people have this strategy of kind of throwing a wide net, and that's actually fine. I actually have nothing wrong with that. There are pieces of my own with which I've done that because I haven't necessarily felt like I've been able to pinpoint a place where I feel like the piece would do best. And maybe sometimes it's just best to have a surprise. Okay, so you can do that. You can throw the net out wide and just apply to all the things. But especially for artists where there is a financial limitation, which is often the case, you know, you want to make a concerted list. Like, this is the money that I have to spend. And these are the places that I think that I would most like to have the work, and or I think the work would be best received. And sometimes, you know, it means reaching out to a festival and asking for a waiver, you know, and saying, okay, well, I don't have the financial capital to really submit to this, but I really, really want to submit to this. And most of the time, people are pretty happy to either give you a discount or a full waiver, right? So just keep that in the back of your head. And then I would say beyond that, making sure that you remember that the festival, though it is the only circuit of events specifically dedicated to screen dance, the Screen Dance Festival circuit, I mean, that there are other places that your work could go. So don't forget that there are film festivals that don't identify as screen dance festivals, but that may speak to your work in a specific way. For example, a women's film festival, an LGBTQIA plus film festival, a film festival that's all about something really, really specific, like vintage cars. You know what I mean? Like there's so much out there, and there are so many niche festivals that if you start searching according to different terms that have to do with your film, you'll find something. Like something that would be appropriate for a youth film festival that's geared toward having a film festival where kids are watching, right? And you have a really upbeat, fun piece that might do well in that type of a space. So there's a lot of different things. And then thinking also about calls to art galleries that are looking for screen-based work. There's lots and lots of calls all the time. So you just have to get on the internet and start searching, and just know that there are many, 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 many places where your work can go, and that to not shut out any one sector because it's not particularly what you felt your work should be in. Think about submitting for the first go round to newer festivals. They're going to be less competitive because they're going to be getting less pieces. So for example, if you're like, I'm going to submit to Dance on Camera, well, do that. It's expensive. But know that your film is going to be up against 300 or 400 other films, right? Where at a smaller, local, newer festival, your film may be up against 50 other films, right? So just another thought too.
Thanks, Cara. That's a great tip. So I kind of want to wrap our conversation on your book. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to read an excerpt from page 82. Is that all right with you?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. As we continue deeper into our relationship and existence alongside screens, it would seem that most live art now must be considered through the context of screens in some way, whether for the purpose of documentation, promotion, or whether the medium itself is of main interest. So with that quote, as an artist, an author, a curator of dance and film, do you think social media has changed the dance film industry?
I do. And I think that it's changed it both for good and for bad, right? Like we're living in this time when it's not one or the other, but it's both and. Yeah. And so I feel like social media has obviously given us platforms that we didn't have before to share our work, and in a way that is lower stakes than if we're creating a full film with a budget and all these things, and we're just hoping that it's going to live its life somewhere in some space that somebody has either created for us or that we've created for ourselves. The challenge with it, though, is that social media and the digital space in general is a very cacophonous space, and things get lost. Right? It's really easy for things to just move down on the feed, be kind of lost forever, even though obviously it's the internet, they never actually go away. Like they're still there somewhere, but you have to dig, like they get lost in the sauce.
Definitely. Is there anything with social media that really excites you that you're looking forward to?
I mean, I think that there's something really fun about this idea that you can never run out of stuff to discover. And I don't even know if discover is the right word, because again, like a lot of it you're being fed. But on TikTok, for example, I mean, you see people that you're not following all the time. And you're like, oh, that was really cool. I want to see more from this person. And I don't know about other people, but I'm the kind of person, like if I see somebody's like art or excerpt or something on social media and I'm really drawn to it, I'll look at that person's website if they have one, and I'll look at their other platforms and see if they have more work. And I've discovered some artists that way. And that's been really satisfying. I don't know, sometimes I feel like there's a pressure to be visible in that space. Like, are you even anybody if you don't have anything up? Like, I already said that I'm not like the best social media person. Like, I post a lot, but it's just more stuff about like my personal life. It's not so much like, hey, I'm an amazing artist. Look at all this stuff. Yeah, I post my artwork, but it's not in the same way of self-promotion that other people may post. Like, I'm not creating trailers and things specifically for promotion of specific events and or my work, right? I'm just sharing because I like to share with my friends and my communities. But that pressure still exists, I think. I think that everyone wants to feel some form of legitimacy, and that in some strange Twilight Zone kind of a way, that social media offers us that. Whether it's because it's the dopamine that we get when people like our stuff, or because it feels like more of a gathering space than our public spaces do at this point, especially given the pandemic. But it feels like one wants to be in that space if one wants to be considered anything at all, right? Like, not just like, are you considered an artist, but like, are you considered a friend to people? I don't know, you know? And so that's a weird thing that I kind of think about, like how much of my daily activity is influenced by my interactions on social media, and how many of my daily actions are influenced by my interactions with real people who still at this point, because we're still in a pandemic and I have a young child who's not vaccinated yet, my interactions on social media actually outnumber the people that I see day to day.
Especially as it relates to like dance and film, because I feel like it is a way of promoting, but also it's like a process of, like you said, exploring and making, but then it's like putting it out there for others to judge. I don't know. It's just so complicated, I think, but I would definitely love to have more of a conversation as it relates to that. My last question for you for this archive is, how do you say no to the box?
How do I say no to the box? I say no to the box because, well, I mean, I'll put it this way. So I very rarely do the proscenium anymore. I came from a concert dance background and I've done a lot of proscenium, but I call the proscenium the great separator. And so I don't do it. I do choreograph on students for the proscenium because, well, that's part of my job. But in terms of my own body, I don't show up there anymore. And that's one of the ways that I've quite literally gotten myself out of a box. But in terms of my screen dance work, even though we're in boxes a lot of the time, you know, Zoom screens, square screens, rectangle screens, I always like to remember why it is that I come to screen dance in the first place, right? Like this idea that it's magic, that we have laws, that we have, why can't I remember words right now? that we can extend the capabilities of the body, right? That we have power over the laws of time and physics, that we can do things on screen that we can't do in real life. And so even though that necessarily at this moment, most of the time shows up in a box, as it were, we are liberating our bodies in a way from what we can do day to day.
Love that. You made it to our final segment, which is our Flash 4, where we ask all our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash. Are you ready?
Flash 4.
Ready? I'm ready.
Here we go. If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be?
Okay, 2 things. One, of course, stay on social media. There's so much to be found, but don't be lazy about it. Like, go and look at people's stuff. I'd say the second thing is just make sure that you become familiar with like Film Freeway and looking at all of the different festivals that exist, because you can find out a lot.
Second question. What was the first dance you saw?
I would say probably the first dance I saw would have had to have been on screen. Probably one of those Hollywood movies like Bojangles or something. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up watching those and I love those, and I can't pinpoint the very first dance that I saw that was like, I was like, oh, that's a dance. But it was probably one of those.
Love it. Do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
Both.
What is your favorite social media platform?
You know, it's really a toss-up between Instagram and TikTok. I am an interloper in TikTok. I hardly ever post anything. I think I have 4 posts on TikTok. I really just like scrolling, but I love Instagram too because it's so pretty.
So as we wrap up our conversation, I want to make sure everyone can go out and get your book. Can you tell our listeners where they can get your book?
Yeah, so you can find it on the McFarland Publishing website, and you can also find it on Amazon. So either one of those, you can find it, and it is reasonably priced, I'm happy to say, having published other academic stuff that's like really expensive, but you can actually buy this. So I hope you do, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that y'all find it useful.
Definitely is. Everyone, go out and get the book. We'll link it, of course, in our show notes. And can you share with our listeners what they could expect if they sign up for your Screen Dance 101 course?
Yeah, so Screen Dance 101 is going to be happening again at the end of April, early May. So this time I'm doing it as more of an intensive instead of over the 6 weeks that I had been doing it, just because there was an interest in that. And we do all the things. We do history, theory, and practice. So you learn a bit about what was and what's to come. You learn a little bit about some theories of making and doing, and you get to make a piece. And it's super fun, and we have a lot of fun together. And I try and pick really fun things to watch and read and listen to. And so I like to think it's pretty engaging, and I hope you do too. In that, I hope you sign up.
Yes, definitely. And we'll, of course, link that for you as well. So, Cara, before we close, is there anything you want to share with our listeners that we haven't covered today?
No, just thank you. I really appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate everyone listening. And reach out if you're interested. I love getting random messages from people just to say hello and talk about Screen Dance. So.
Yes, make sure you slide into Cara's DMs. Thank you for this amazing conversation, Cara, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for Screen Dance, Dance and Film, all of the sorts. This book, again, thank you for this contribution to our field. I think it's so important and it's extremely meaningful, especially as a curator of dance and film. And I just can't wait to see what you do next in the world.
Thank you so much.
The No Box Dance Film Festival, NBFF, is now accepting submissions for its 4th year as an independent film festival. NBFF seeks dance-related films that challenge the possibilities of what dance can look like in video form. NBFF has 3 categories for submissions: summer short series, general, and documentaries. For more information and how to apply, visit filmfreeway.com/NoBox Dance Film Festival. KNOWBOX Dance Film Festival. Visit our website, knowboxdance.com, or DM us on social media.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOWBoxDance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.